Okay, so I have started the recording, so anything from now on will be recorded for anybody who's not able to join us. We'll be able to go. Okay, so while we're waiting for the last people to join, I'll just quickly talk about the assignment brief that is on the screen now. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing because you guys are familiar with it by now. I made a few edits to the assignment brief this time. That's this document that you can see on the screen now. And I will upload it to your announcements tomorrow morning when I download the recording and sort that all out for you as well. But just a reminder, and to those that are listening to the recording as well, this assignment brief is very important. It's got certain information in it that is always that information that students are looking for at the last minute when they're trying to upload their assignment and they're battling with certain things. So all it really does is remind you that you must upload a PDF file. I'm still getting students that are uploading Word files, even though the instruction to upload PDF is all over the show. And some help as to how to turn a Word file into a PDF file if you are battling. Then that's just, again, another reminder. And then just another reminder also that when you do go to do the actual upload to learn of your assignment, you go to the assessment submissions menu where it says submissions links, and you go through there to find the link to upload. But you must remember that the first step that you must do is to go click on the integrity declaration and accept that, because if you haven't done that, the system won't allow you to do the upload. And I often get students panicking that they can't upload the assignment and they don't understand why, and it's just because they've forgotten about the integrity declaration, which I know at the last minute is easy to do. So this is just a reminder. And then also I still always get panicked emails from students about similarity reports. So just remember, because you are uploading PDF files, you can ignore any similarity report from SafeAssign. So SafeAssign will generate a similarity report regardless, but we don't use that for our numeric modules. And then also just a reminder, sometimes I also get students saying that they're battling to upload their assignments, and can they please email them to me? No, we are not allowed to accept any emailed us tasks or assignments of any kind. Everything has to be uploaded to the Learn system, and that's because they have to be marked there, and the marks are captured from the Learn system into the student mark system by the national office. So it's the only way that those marks can find their way to the right place at the end of the day. So you must do that. And then also, again, just a reminder that the cutoff, the deadline is 9 p.m. on your due date, which I think is the 7th of June. And that means you must have finished by 9 p.m. You must not still be online trying to upload your assignment. So make sure that you have finished the assignment at least an hour or two, a couple of hours beforehand, and you've uploaded it, so that if you've got load shedding, password problems, goodness knows what else, you can solve them before 9 p.m. Because remember, I don't know what day of the week the 7th of June is, but if you have to log a ticket for technical assistance, those that's going to yours, that's July. 7th of June is on a Wednesday. The technical IT people as well as lecturers are not working at 9 p.m. at night. They are IT people. There's nobody reading tickets at that time of night, so they won't be able to help you until the following morning. So they keep normal office hours 8 to 5, and both tutors, lecturers, admin people, ticket people, those are the hours they keep. So bear that in mind. If you do encounter any technical problem, you must log a ticket. It's the only thing to do. I won't be able to help you. and also logging a ticket is then a record of the fact that you were trying to upload your assignment and there was some kind of a technical issue. You must take screenshots for proof and attach your screenshots to your ticket as well. And then very important as well, if for any reason when it's coming close to that deadline of the 7th of June and you realize that for something in your life has gone wrong, maybe you've got bad flu or COVID and you're not able to work or something else has gone wrong and you're not going to be able to make the deadline, then please immediately log a ticket on the Student Hub and apply for extension, giving the reasons with supporting documentation if you have any, if that's applicable, and ask for an extension straight away. You are allowed to do that, and if you've got a valid reason, they will give you the extension. So also preferably apply for the extension before the due date so that you know whether it's been given to you or not. And then you don't put yourself into the position of either not uploading an assignment at all or uploading a half-finished assignment just because something went wrong and you weren't able to finish. And remember also, don't send me messages. I keep also getting messages about, please, can you have an extension? Tutors are not authorized to grant extensions. We have to do that to keep the neutrality of the tutors. So the only way to get an extension is by logging a ticket, and that will then be handled by the assessment center at the national office. And then also please remember, when I'm marking assignments, I've noticed too, I go to a lot of trouble with the lesson plan that I prepare for to accompany your assignment, in making sure that I've searched out all the relevant hints and tips and places to go and questions that will be helpful to you in the textbook. And I can see often that students have not even used the lesson plan at all. So please give yourself enough time that you got your textbook in front of you, you've got the lesson plan and the assignment, and you, with all of those things together, you use them to work through and get the best possible marks. Because if you do that, there's absolutely no ways you can do badly in an assignment with all of those resources. Okie doke. So that is then, as I say, a couple of changes, additions that I've made to this document, and I will upload it for you guys. So then let's go on to the lesson plan itself, so you can see what I've put in there. Just stop that and open the lesson plan. Oopsie. Okay, let's wait for that to load. Should be any second now. Okay, and then also remember, guys, when I upload documents, you have to control the zooming in or zooming out on your side. So just use the magnifying glass at the top left of your screen to zoom in or zoom out, so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so I'll try and keep it brief. I know my daughter always tells me I have a habit of repeating myself and over explaining, so I'll try and keep it brief so that the recording is not too long and you guys can also get on with the rest of your evening as quickly as possible. Okay, so here we go with the brief itself. So again, this information here at the top in blue is very important. That's why I've put it right up at the top, and why it is in blue, because paper after paper that I mark, these are the mistakes that the students are making over and over again, and that's across all modules. So pay attention. You must reference and use the correct referencing method. Only for theory questions that require you to write or explain, use a definition of some kind where you've got a paragraph. And you must follow all the usual conventions for referencing and plagiarism as in the rest of your academic modules. It applies to everything. Then just a reminder that when you are reading through the questions, use a highlighter so that you are highlighting the pertinent instructions in the required part of the question very carefully so that you are absolutely 100% sure what was asked in the question and that you have answered exactly what they asked for, and that you haven't left any parts of the question out, and that you've hit the brief basically. Students still quite often misread the question, or they leave bits out and then they lose marks in that way. Very important for these numeric modules, you must always show all of your workings. If you've had to do any kind of a calculation for an answer, then those calculations must be written down on your paper. Because often if you've got the answer incorrect but you've shown your calculations on the paper, I can still give you some workings marks, even though you won't get the full marks because maybe the final answer was incorrect. So it's important to show your workings so that you can get the maximum number of marks, okay? As well as for me to follow what you've done, but it is so that you can get the maximum number of marks. And then another one here, this last one, always have a look at the number of marks allocated to each question, and then make sure that your say the size of your answer, what you have written, the size of the paragraph, or the amount of information that you are giving me is appropriate to the number of marks allocated, that it's not too much or too little. Okay, so you've got that to read through as well, and please read through those blue lines again when you are going to sit and tackle your assignment. Go back and read them and ask yourself, have I done all of those things? Okay, so just give me 1 second and then we'll start having a look at this information for each question. Okie doke. So question 1, and this one is just for 15 marks. Oh, also I didn't show you that bit in the module outline, but for this particular assignment, which is your second one, it is going to be concentrated on learning units 3 and 4. And if you go through the questions now, you'll see that they really have concentrated the questions on those 2 learning units. You've already been tested on 1 and 2. And your learning unit 2 in particular, you will be using that knowledge throughout the rest of this module. But your actual questions in this assignment are focused on learning units 3 and 4. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is while you are doing the assignment, you might still have to go back to learning unit 2 and refer to something to do with the accounting equation or the double entry system to remind yourself of how things work when you are doing questions in learning unit 3 and 4. Okay, so that's the way this works. So learning unit 3 is VAT and source documents. Very, very, very important learning units. Really can't overemphasize that enough, because again, this learning unit 3, the information in this learning unit you will also use throughout the rest of this course. Because obviously VAT calculations are going to be included in the transactions that we are recording in learning unit 4 and in learning unit 5. And in our inventory systems as well. All of those questions, VAT will now come into all of the transactions that you do. So in learning unit 3, we teach you about those VAT calculations and how we record VAT in our accounting system. And from now onwards, you will then apply that VAT knowledge to the rest of the learning units. The same thing with the VAT category is extremely important. And then obviously source documents, because again in learning unit 4 and learning unit 5, you're going to be using source documents as your, what's the word? Source documents as your workings that you will be doing for transactions that you're going to be entering into cash books and into the credit journals in the next learning unit. So again, learning unit 2 and 3 keep going back and revising those 2 learning units over and over again, because they apply to everything else that you do. So in question 1, it consists of question 1.1 and 1.2. So 1.1 is just a short theory question for 5 marks. And they ask you to name 2 bases or 2 ways that a company can register for VAT. So this question was asked in one of my other modules as well. And honestly, it was silly, a number of students that could not answer this question. Remember, I keep reminding you about your learning objectives at the beginning of each learning unit. In your module outline and on Learn, you've got that list of bullet points, which are the learning objectives. Those are your learning outcomes, which tell you what they are going to ask you. So this question is one of the learning objectives. So go to Learning Unit 3, read the list of learning objectives, and there you will see this will jump out at you, hit you between the eyes, and you'll know exactly what this question is all about. And I've given you a hint as well into which section in the textbook that you will find it, and the page number. And remember, because this is a paragraph question, you have to reference this question. Okay. Also, just a reminder, all of these references that I've got, sections and page numbers, are all referred to your prescribed textbook. Those are page numbers, question numbers, and section numbers in your textbook. And then also just a reminder, which is something I've noticed across all the modules that I teach, students are tending, particularly with assignments, they're tending to go to Google and just look at a question, and then they type it into Google and then type in whatever comes up. You have to use your textbook as your 99.9% chief source of information for answering your questions. In these modules, textbooks are purpose written for your module and for your learning outcomes. So everything that you need is in your textbooks. Very little, other than the occasional theory question where they do want you to research on the internet or elsewhere, do you have to go anywhere other than your textbook. Then question 1.2 is a very good question. I really like the way they've asked this question, where they have given us 4 scenarios, and for each of the 4 scenarios, you have to identify which VAT supply category applies to that scenario. And they've chosen an area that they know that the students find tricky, and it's excellent because it's really going to get you thinking, and it's going to get you to master this small part of the VAT category section that can be quite tricky. So what I've done for you here on the lesson plan is, again, I've told you which section in the textbook and on what page number you can find the main source of information that you need for this. So if you go to page 80 in your textbooks, which you've hopefully got in front of you, you'll see that on page 80 and 81, we have got the section covering VAT supply categories. So we've got 4 VAT supply categories: standard rated supplies, 0 rated supplies, exempt supplies, and then non-allowable items. You must make sure that you understand what each of those 4 categories mean and how we apply each of those 4 categories to transactions that we are recording in our books of account where VAT is involved. In our 0 rated supplies, and they don't really have that, they just say, this is in your textbooks on page 80. The second bullet point says certain foodstuffs, for example, brown bread, milk, fruit and vegetables, etc., are 0 rated. So currently in South Africa, there are 21 basic items that the government has 0 rated. So if you go to this link that I have pasted into the paste it into your lesson plan, you will find the full list of those 21 items. So for this question, you're going to need to go and look for that full list so that you can identify correctly in each of those 4 examples. Are they 0 rated or not 0 rated, or standard rated or not, or is it an exempt supply? Okay, so that's just a helpful little link so that you don't have to go and search on the internet, because I was actually quite surprised it's not that easy to find the latest up-to-date list of those 21 items. They were updated. We used to have, I think it was 19 items that were 0 rated. And then a couple of years ago, I think it was in 2019, they updated the list and added a couple of extra items to that list. 19, 20, 21. Yes, it was definitely 2 more items that they added. And one of those items that they added appears in this question 1.2 that you've got here. Gavin, I did have a look at this, and I didn't put on your lesson plan here that this question needs to be referenced because I didn't think it was necessary. This is really kind of like a technical question. You're not writing a paragraph. It's kind of like technical information. So if you have, for instance, if you do use this link that I've put here or some other outside information, it is good form just to put that reference in your reference list at the end, or right at the end of the question. So yeah, and that's always on the side of rather reference than don't reference. So if you've used an outside source, then reference. Thanks for that question. It was I'm glad that you're thinking about these things. Okay, so that will definitely help you to get those two. You won't have any trouble with those 2 questions if you use that information that I've given you there. Then our question 2 is also for 15 marks. And this also is a Learning Unit 3 question. And they really have, in this paper, pick the things that they know that the students are not the students' strong points. And again, I'm super glad they've done that, because it forces you to revise these sections, which means that you will be prepared for the exam when the exam comes. So question 2.1, I've got a little table with 5 line items in it, and you have to calculate the missing amounts. So they've given you letters from A to L, and you have to do a calculation for each one of those letters, and then work out what that missing amount is. And this whole question is all about markup. So some of the line items are markup on cost, and some of them are markup on selling price. So this forces you to really think about it and get this right once and for all, as well as to get the actual maths of the calculations correct. So I'm happy about this question. I'm glad they've given you this question. So what I've done here in the lesson plan again is I've given you the relevant sections where you'll find these the information that you need. So if you go to page 93 in your textbooks, at the bottom of page 93, you'll see the section 3.6.2 is called the markup, the gross margin, and VAT. So there they've got a little write-up at the page, bottom of page 93, but then most importantly, if you turn over to page 94, you'll see that we've got example 3.2, where they have got 4 different illustrations. Is it 4? Sorry, 3 different illustrations where they have given you 3 different scenarios explaining how these calculations work. So using example 3.2, if you go through the entire example 3.2, this is really going to help you to master markups. If the markup is on cost or if the markup is on the selling price. And for this question, you want illustration 3 on page 95. Why did I say 95? That should be 96. from starts on page 95 and goes through to page 96. Because if you go to page 96, you'll see at the top of the page they have got when the markup on cost is given, and then examples in the calculation, and immediately below that when the markup on selling price is given. So page 96 is where you will find the text and the theory and the calculations for those two scenarios. And then on page 97, you've got question 3.7, which is which is similar to what they're asking you to do in question 2.1. I thought there was another question that I had written down there. So use question 3.7 and the answer to question 3.7 as well to assist you with how those calculations work. But hopefully by now, because we have done quite a bit of work on markup and gross margins in our previous collabs, I've posted worksheets for you and tried to do a bit of revision with you for that. So hopefully you are already on top of that. And as always, guys, remember with these kinds of things, the same thing with the VAT calculations, the only thing that is going to get you on top of that is practice. Blank piece of paper, lots of different example questions, and you just work through them with your calculator over and over again until you get them right and the penny has dropped. And for this one as well, I've put the big note. Please remember to show your workings or your calculations for each of those letters from A to L, so that I can see what you were thinking and what you did as well, so that if you have got something wrong, I can help you to tell you where it was that you went wrong when I'm marking the paper. Just 1 second. Okay, anybody got any questions at this stage? Sorry, guys, I know I don't like to keep you guys hanging on, so I'm trying to not waffle, but there's always time for questions if anyone's got a question of any kind whatsoever. Anything else? And remember, you can interrupt me, just pop in the chat box or put your hand up at the bottom of the screen if you have got anything that comes to mind as we're going through this. Okay, so then the next question 3, which is for 10 marks, also learning unit 3. And I think this is the last question that comes out of learning unit 3. And then our last 2 questions are learning unit 4 questions. So this is a very interesting question, and I'm glad for those of you that are online now, you are going to be very happy that you came on and that you've looked at the assignment in good time, because for this question, you have to actually go out to some shop or ask your mom or your dad or somebody to give you an invoice. So we'll go through the question paper in a minute, but what you have to do here, it says obtain a full or an abridged tax invoice. So what they mean by that, they want you to go and get a real life tax invoice. So I've put here a Checkers or Spar Pick and Pay till slip, or a restaurant bill, or even if you've gone to the cafe and bought a few items, or you've gone to the quick spa and you've bought yourself lunch and a drink. Anything like that will do, but it has to be a real life till slip. It can be an older one. It doesn't have to, you don't have to go out this week and go shopping to get a till slip. It doesn't matter if it's, as long as it's current, where we're using the 15% VAT. So that came in, I think, in 2019 as well. But it must be a real invoice, obviously that's legible, that we can read it. And you're going to use that actual invoice that you went and found from somewhere in the house. And you're going to use that invoice to then answer, first of all, these first three questions, 3.1 to 3.4. So obviously, all of you, your answers are going to be slightly different depending on which invoice you have actually found and you are using. You're in Angola currently, Mega. Okay, I'm not familiar with the VAT system in Angola. Do they have a VAT system there? Do they have, is there VAT included on invoices? Perfect, then that's fine. Then use the, then use your Angolan invoice. And then when you do this question, if you can just type for me somewhere to say this invoice is from Angola, just so that I remember when I'm marking it. And the rest of the questions you answer exactly as for Angola. Okay, because VAT system all around the world is identical. I've worked in the UK, they have VAT there too. The percentage VAT is different, but the system works exactly the same. So Gavin said, will you get the 2 marks if they're on? Yes, I've had a look at the marking scheme, and it does say that if there are no 0 rated items, you will still get those 2 marks, but then you have to write down there and say there are no 0 rated items, and then maybe explain that a little bit. In other words, say a 0 rated item would have been this, or and give an example of 1 or 2 items that would have been 0 rated, and then just say that on that particular invoice, no 0 rated, none of that type of item was purchased. Okay. So don't just leave it out and ignore it, but give a little explanation to show that you understand what a 0 rated item is. And you will get those 2 marks. So if you've already got an invoice that you've been working with, that's absolutely fine. Okie dokes. So that's quite an interesting, it's easy marks, and it's quite interesting. But again, I know those students that are suddenly at 7 p.m. before the assignment is due is going to start trying to do the assignment. They're going to be a little bit stumped there if they won't have an invoice to hand. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory. They're simple questions that they've asked you. The main thing is that you have got a tax invoice. And then also, we'll go through those instructions when we get to the actual question mark. But you also have to scan your invoice in with your question paper so that I can see the invoice that you've used when I'm marking it. Okay, so just don't forget to do that. Then question 3.5 is to complete the table. And again, if you go to your textbooks on page 76, there's a section there, 3.2, that says, how does the VAT system work? And in that paragraph, they explain input VAT and output VAT. And also at the top of page 76, what is value added tax? If you read through that, those couple of paragraphs, they also mention it there. So you should be able to work out for yourselves what those answers are. It's only 2 marks, so don't spend too much time on that, but you should be able to work out those answers. Okay. Then we come to question 4, which is the second last question of the paper. And then this, now we start working with Learning Unit 4. And also 2 very nice questions. They do require you to have practiced your cash books and to have worked through the examples in Learning Unit 4 so that you're familiar with how our cash books work. And please remember also at the top of question 4, as soon as we've done Learning Unit 3, where we've introduced VAT to you as students, all of the learning units hereafter are going to include VAT. So in question 4, they say the business is a registered VAT vendor and we only trade with other registered VAT vendors, which means our invoices will include VAT, and the people that we purchase from are also VAT vendors, which means there will be VAT included in their invoice as well, unless otherwise specified or unless VAT is not applicable in a particular situation. Okay. Chedo, what if you insert the invoice instead of scanning? How do you mean insert? You're going to type it out. We do want to see the actual, like a photograph or a photocopy or a scan of the actual invoice itself, because otherwise students could just make up invoices themselves. You can open your microphone if you want to, if it's easier to chat rather than type. I'm not 100% sure what you mean by insert the invoice instead of scanning. Do you guys know how to do that? If you are going to complete your assignment in Word, you would scan your invoice or take a photograph of it with your cell phone to create a JPEG. Then you would paste that JPEG onto a page in your Word document. Like, you know, I'm sure you guys are probably better at Word than I am, where you then paste it as a picture in your Word document. Does that, that's probably how most of you are going to do it if you are using Word to type up your assignment. So you would take a photograph on your cell phone. What I usually do then is email the photograph to myself so I can then pick it up on my laptop, and then from the email I then download the JPEG and then convert it to a PDF or just paste it into my Word document. Does that help you, Cheeto? Is that what you were asking? Hopefully. Okay, you can always just send me a message when it comes closer to the time if you're still battling. Okay, so question 4, learning unit 4. So for question, a picture on Word. Oh, okay, that's no problem. Yes, yes, exactly that. Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yes. So in other words, in Word, you're going to use the insert function. Exactly. Perfectly correct. Yeah. Okay, so question 4.1. Let me just go to the question. They really do emphasize this exercise of students being able to analyze transactions under the accounting equation. So you've already seen this in our learning unit 2. So now in here we're doing it again in question 4.1. So just take note, and I have made the reminder here at the bottom. So you've got a long list of transactions in this question 4, but it's only the cash receipts on days 3, 8, 11, and 23. So just those 4 receipts that they want you to analyze under the accounting equation in question 4.1. So I just know as I'm sitting here that when I mark this paper, I will have some students that have analyzed all, I don't know how many of these transactions. So only those 4 are required, and they are all receipts. And I've just put the reminder here again. Remember, guys, that VAT is now included in our transactions, which means that we also have VAT input and VAT output accounts included in some of our transactions. And so where we've got to go account debited and account credited, that we mustn't forget the VAT accounts in these questions now. So to that end, if you go to question 4.3 on page 111, go and have a look there quickly. question 4.3, and you'll see there at the start of the question it says Omega Traders, they're a registered VAT vendor and they only trade with other registered VAT vendors. And if you go to page 113, you'll see there part 3 of the question says complete the following table in date order, and they have asked in 4.3 they are asked to do this analysis under the accounting equation. So if you go to the solution for question 4.3, you will be able to see exactly what the analysis looks like for all of these transactions now that we are VAT registered. And in fact, if you look at the example given on page 113, where they have done the first transaction on the 3rd, they filled it in so students can see exactly what they're supposed to do. You'll see there exactly, we've got the day, the document number. You don't have to, you have that column original or not, you've just got account debited and account credited, and you'll see that there are 3 accounts. There are 2 accounts that we debited, trade in inventory and input VAT, and there was 1 account that we credited, creditors control. And then you'll see there are 3 amounts. But in both cases, you'll see that under the assets column, the 32,320 plus the 4,524.80 equals the 36,844.20 that's underneath the liabilities column. So now we had 2 amounts under the assets added together that equal the 1 amount under the liabilities. But in so doing, our accounting equation was still in balance after we had recorded the transaction, because remember, the debits must always equal the credits, and the left-hand side of our accounting equation must always equal the right-hand side of our accounting equation. So when we've got VAT, we have to split the VAT exclusive amount away from the VAT so that you'll have 2 amounts, 1 VAT exclusive and 1 the VAT amount, and then the 3rd amount will probably be the including VAT amount. Okay, that's obviously where VAT is applicable. It won't be applicable to every single one of your transactions. And then in that question, you'll be able to find other examples as well. And then also question 4.6 on page 125. So if you go to page 125 in your textbooks, 4.6, you'll see that this looks exactly the same as this question 4.1. They've also got account debited, account credited, assets, etc. And in this case, they are using the transactions from example 4.1 and they've analyzed them under the accounting equation. So you'll have plenty of example transactions to go back to refer to see exactly how that must be done. So you'll be able to copy them from there. Okay, so I've given you those 2 questions as reference. Remember to include the VAT accounts. And you've already had lots of practice in analyzing transactions under the accounting equation, lots of examples, and note you only have to do question 4.1 for those 4 transactions, not for everything. And then also for that same question 4.1, note that the increases that must be indicated with the plus and the decreases that must be indicated with the minus, that those increases and decreases refer to whether the particular element of the accounting equation, in other words, the asset, owner's equity or liability, is either increasing or decreasing. Okay, so if one of the elements is increasing, you put a plus. If one of the elements is decreasing, you put a minus. That plus or minus doesn't refer to debits or credits. That's just one of the common mix-ups that students tend to make. And then for question 4.2 and 4.3, sorry, not, where's my, yeah, for 4.2 and 4.3, in 4.2, they want you to complete the cash book payments, and they have given you in the question paper the specific headings that you must use. So you're just going to create a table in your answer book exactly as they've given you. And question 4.3, the petty cash journal. So you're going to be doing the cash book payments and the petty cash journal for these transactions in question 4.1. So what you'll do for these questions is you'll go through the list of transactions that they've given you, and you'll identify, you'll have to go through each one, read them carefully, and pick out which of those transactions is a payment that the business made that would have gone through the cash book payments, and which of those transactions was a payment that went through the petty cash journal. And then make sure that you put the correct transactions in the correct journal. Okay, and I think in that last collab that we did, and I have posted a recording for you, it was question, what question number was that? Was it question 4.8? Yes, it was question 4.8 that I revised with you that included all three of the cash books. So again, if you go back there and have a look, you'll be reminded of exactly how we go about completing our cash books and what the calculation is for each of the different columns in our cash books. So hopefully you have already watched those recordings of those collabs. Then our last question 5 is also learning unit 4. And in this is a nice question as well. So what they've done in this question is they have given us, if you've got your question paper in front of you, cash book receipts of college bookstores, and then there is just all of the column headings with one row of totals. So what they have given us are the totals for the month of March for those columns. So they didn't give us each of the individual transactions for the month of March. They've added them all up, and these amounts that we're looking at are the totals for those columns for the month. Okay, just make sure you understand that. It does say total on the left-hand side, but I know students tend to get muddled up, and they'll think that that's a transaction and wonder what's going on. And then the same thing for the cash book payments. They have just given us the totals for each of the columns, the cash book payments for the month of March. So the first question, 5.1, they've said calculate the totals marked A and B in the cash books above. So from the information given, you've got to calculate what the total is that would belong in the bank column. So hopefully you remember the rules for that. That should be quite simple. And then question 5.2, if you have a look at your textbooks on page 114, that is where the cash book receipts journal is discussed, and the analysis of receipts column is discussed, and you have got a whole description of how that works on page 115. Reference your answer, because that is something that you would have had to go and look up and then use a reference. You will have to use a reference in order to arrive at the answer to question 5.2, so reference your answer. And then questions 5.3 to 5.6, for those 4 questions, they have asked us to prepare 4 general ledger accounts. So I put general ledger in capital letters because students do muddle up general ledger with general journal and with, I don't know, other journals, etc. So make sure that you know a general ledger account is what we call a T account. So if you go and look at your textbooks quickly on page 113, at the right at the bottom there, they have got the T account called bank account. So remember, it's the account where we do the T, and on the left-hand side, we have got date folio debit, date folio details amount, and on the right-hand side, we've also got date folio details amount. And again, if you go to page 127 in your textbooks. This is very important because in the question they ask us to balance the accounts. They say complete the account and balance them. So on page 127, at the bottom there, section 442, the rules for balancing an account. It starts at the bottom of page 127 and then continues over to page 128 to just above example 4.2. So if you go and have a look on page 128 as well, you will see that that is what a T account looks like. Sorry, I had the folio in the wrong place. It's date, details, folio amount on the left-hand side for the debits and date, details, folio amount on the right-hand side for the credits for whichever general ledger account it is that we are completing. And the name of the general ledger account always appears right at the top in the middle of the T. Okay, so just make sure you've got it clear in your heads what a general ledger account is. And then if you look at example 4.2, starting on page 128, in that example, you will find all four of those accounts they've asked you to complete: the bank account, the trading inventory account, the capital account, and the sales account. So you'll be able to go to this example, have a look and see what it looks like, what belongs on the debit side, what belongs on the credit side of each of those four accounts, and then go to your transactions, your cash book totals and post them to the correct side of those four general ledger accounts. But if you use this example 4.2 as your source for completing that account for that question, then you won't go wrong. Okay, I'm sure you'll manage there. Okay, so you'll see that in this lesson plan, I have given you all the information and pointers and examples in the textbook that that you need to complete the assignment. Any questions that come up while you're busy doing it? Remember, always I'm here for questions, so please ask me questions if you get stuck with anything. And then we'll just take a quick squiz at the actual question paper itself in case there's anything there that I want to point out to you. But hopefully by now you guys have learned that how important it is to read your paper properly and that you are paying attention to everything that they give you so that you have got it right. Okay, so question 1. Name 2 bases. There's nothing funny there for 5 marks. Just remember always they've asked us here to name. Okay, so that's one thing they've asked us to do. This should say and. So and give a brief explanation. So the explanation is the second thing they've asked you of the main differences between the 2 bases. Then this was the one where they've given us 4 different scenarios, and take note it's 2.5 marks each. And they have said here, get my pencil back, which VAT supplier category is it? So that's again one thing that you've got to do, will apply. And then again it's and give a reason for your answer. So that's number 2. And then also number 3, if input VAT can be claimed or not. So in other words, can input VAT be claimed or not? So there are 3 things that you have to answer for each scenario. Okay. And that's why there's 2.5 marks for each of those questions, because for answering the question as it is asked in its entirety. So just explain it in your own words. Your answers don't have to be long in terms of long paragraphs. Just a brief sentence will suffice, but all that information must be present to get all of the marks. Then our question 2, calculate the missing amounts. Okay, so this is quite self-explanatory. So the format of your answer will be for question 2.1. What I would, oh, this is too big. Sorry, just trying to get. So you would type A and then the answer, and then in brackets I would put the calculations. And then underneath that, the letter B, and then your answer. Oopsie, your answer, and then in brackets either next to it or below it, calculations as to how you arrived at that. And then underneath that, C, etc. Okay, so that's what your answer should look like. Nice and neat, one underneath each other, A, and then underneath it B, and underneath it C, underneath it D, so that it's easy for me to read what your answer is, and it's easy for me to see what your calculations are, and it'll also make it easy for you guys to see what you've done yourselves. And then question 2.2 is just a short calculation that you've got to do for 2 marks. And again, that uses those same references that I gave you in that question for those calculations that you've got to do. Then question 3 is this one where you've got to go and find your own obtain, okay, a full or abridged tax invoice. Scan the invoice and include it. So that include, if we say there, oh, no, not there. Try and put it here. Okay, insert it on the Word page. And then over here, they have said answers without an invoice will not be marked. So they really want they want the student to prove that you did go and get a real invoice and you've used a real invoice to answer the questions. You haven't just made up stuff at the last minute. Okay, so all of those first 4 questions you'll use your invoice for, and then this table, I've given you the section in the textbook to go and find the information for that. And again, guys, don't panic, it's only for 2 marks. Do your best. The information you need is in the textbook, and you will also apply the knowledge that you've learned in, where did they have that other section on your assets, and in Learning Unit 2 as well, about your assets and liabilities and what increases on the left-hand side and what increases on the right-hand side. And then this is our question 4, which is our list of transactions that they've given us. Remembering that the important part here is the business is a registered VAT vendor, and we trade only with registered VAT vendors. So that means everything that we sell will be the selling price plus VAT equals our selling price will then be a VAT including selling price, and everything that we purchase, the total of the invoices from our suppliers will include VAT. So we have to work out the VAT amount and the excluding VAT amount when we enter those transactions into our books. Okay, obviously where VAT is, all amounts given in the transactions below include VAT unless VAT is not applicable. So under what circumstances might VAT not be applicable in these transactions? What sorts of transactions would we have here where VAT might not be applicable? Who can think of an example? So they're saying, yeah, all of these transactions, all of these amounts include VAT, okay, except in obviously here where they've specifically told you that it excludes VAT. That excludes VAT there. They've said that includes VAT. And then also there are some transactions that just by the nature of the transaction will not have that included. What sort of transactions are they? Anyone got any idea? Give me some examples. You can just type it in the chat box. What types of transactions would not include VAT? Remember, if you go to page 80 in your textbooks, page 80, what do you find there? Your VAT categories. Okay, so sometimes you might have an item that's 0 rated or a supply that is an exempt supply, and then just by the nature of the transaction, there won't be any VAT in the transaction. So from that point of view, you're going to have to keep your eyes wide open and keep thinking with each transaction. Is this a standard rated supply? Is it a 0 rated supply exempt? Or is it even perhaps a non-allowable supply? Remember, a non-allowable supply just means that there will be VAT included in the total of whatever it is you purchased, but because of the nature of the purchase, in other words, perhaps it was entertainment or something to do with the passenger vehicle for your business, you're not allowed to claim the VAT back. Okay, so that's just what to watch out for with question 4. We've gone through the examples in the textbook for doing that. Here for 4.2, you absolutely must use these columns exactly as they've given you. These are the columns that you must use, and then you'll complete the transactions using these columns for your cash book payments in 4.2, your cash book payments in 4.2, and then for 4.3, you must use these identical columns for your petty cash journal, and make sure that all the transactions that belong in the petty cash journal, you've used only these columns and nothing else. And then the last one, our question 5, is where they have given us the totals for the month for the cash book receipts and for the cash book payments. So remember, in our bookkeeping cycle, which we'll find on page 18 in your textbooks. If you go to page 18 quickly, this bookkeeping cycle is very important, and if you keep going back to it, if you muddled up as to like what is the next step that I must do, the bookkeeping cycle will always tell us. So in the bookkeeping cycle, transactions take place. We then summarize the transactions onto a source document, and then the source document is summarized in a journal. So here's a journal called Cash Book Receipts. We summarized all receipt type transactions in this journal, and we summarized the transactions for the month by totaling our journal. So these are the totals. Then the next step says the general ledger summarizes the journals, which means the next step in the bookkeeping cycle is to take the totals from our subsidiary ledgers or subsidiary journals and post these totals into the general ledger T accounts. And that's the job or the step that you guys have to do in question 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6. Okay, posting these totals into the T accounts at the end of the month of March. So please don't forget about that table on page 18. It will always help you to give you context into exactly which step in the bookkeeping process the question has asked you to do. Okay, guys, so that is then a good run through of your assignment, and hopefully this is going to help you to get the right information in order to complete your assignment and get it correct and done nice and quickly as well. Because obviously the better idea you've got of what you've got to do, the quicker you can get your assignment done. And I'll post this recording for you guys tomorrow, so you'll have it to work with, as well as the lesson plan we used and that little assignment brief as well. Okay, brilliant, guys. Thank you very, very much for popping in. I'm sure it will pay dividends and you'll get your assignments done quickly. And I look forward to marking them. Okay, guys. You guys have a good rest of your evening, and then we'll chat again soon when we start doing our exam prep. Pleasure, Gavin. Bye, guys. Bye, Cheeto. Who else is still online? Bye, Jessica. Nicole.